Okay, it is exactly 8:30 p.m. Wednesday, no, October the 14th. Boy, if it was November the 14th, the course would be over. But it's October the 14th, and this is week number two. Week number two. And actually, we have, I think it's two more or three more lectures in this course because there's not one in week 6. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can talk about the assignments. Um, I will let you know that your assignments for week 1 will be graded by Saturday. I mean, well, by midnight of Saturday, or rather by midnight of midnight of Saturday, basically after 11:59 p.m. on Friday. So your assignments will be graded. Okay. And so let's go ahead and take a look at this. Going down. Okay, you know about rubrics. We talk a lot about that. So yeah, so week 2. So yeah, we got 3 more lectures to go. 3, 4, and 5. And as you know, your lectures are every Wednesday at 8:30 to 9:30. That's roughly the time. It could be before that with this course. Okay. Let's take a look at the course calendar real quick. All right. And as you see, that's where we are here, the 14th, and it tells you click on that, tells you about your live lecture. Then your initial post was due yesterday, the 13th. Adult and correction systems, I've looked at a couple of those. Your reading and PowerPoints were sent on Monday. And then your reply post is due Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. Then your written assignment, correctional systems, which we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. And then your quiz, you know how that works. You have 3 bites out of the apple. You have to complete the last one by 11:59 p.m. on the 18th. And then your key phrase that I give you today. So that's your assignments, and we're going to talk about them in just a second. But remember, again, the course ends on the 10th. The 10th. That is the last day of class. So basically, um, if you look at the schedule here from yesterday, next week, so you got about 3, 4 more weeks. Yep. And then the course will be over pretty fast. So let's close this down. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, so let's go back to course home. And let's see what we got here in terms of announcement. So this week we're going to deal with adults, juveniles, and criminal behavior. Chapters 6, 12, and 17 of your textbook, along with the PowerPoints, have been sent to you to help you prepare for the tests and to understand the materials that we are covering this week. And then there are theories impacting corrections, incarceration, and criminal experience, special populations, adult and correction systems, and vocabulary review, which we'll briefly touch on those. Then your discussion post, adult and correction systems. I already said it was due initially yesterday and reply Saturday. And then your written assignments, correction systems, and the quiz. And then you know about my motto, adversity is the springboard to success. So let's go into the module itself. And let's look at the assignments in more detail where I can answer the question that you asked me earlier. So anyway, of course, this is your discussion post, and it tells you what you need to do in your initial post, explain the difference between the adult and corrections, and support the one of the differences by examples of process, including terminology and why you believe the difference is important, and then your response. You choose a peer's information and then respond to that. So now let's look at the correctional system. So here's how it works. So we're um, the goal in correction systems is to reduce recidivism. That's the key. And the reason why is because you try not to have a revolving door. Unfortunately, because of the fact that um, there are things that are not taken care of, such as, for example, if individuals have a drug problem, substance abusers. These are people who commit crime, as I said in all of my classes, to support their habits. They're really not bad people, but they're people who are stuck in uh, situations, and they're kind of at the mercy of their drug habit. And that if you lock them up, you can lock them up 300 years and let them out, or you can let them out 10 days, whatever. The point of the matter is, unless you address the issue, deal with the substance abuse issue, they're going to go right back to committing the crimes. It's just like a person who is sick and you don't treat them for their illness, and you let them leave the hospital or go out, and they begin to contaminate other people. It's kind of like um, the current state that we're in now with COVID-19. When you get um, tested positive, you show signs, you're hospitalized, then you're released, and then you start going back out into the public against the advice of physicians, and so you're going to make people sick. So substance abusers are people who have committed crimes to support their habits. They're locked up, and then they let them back out, and so they're going to go back out and they're going to commit crimes um, as a habit. So we're going to deal with um, special populations today, and those populations are, just a few of them are listed below. And as it says here, women, juvenile, elderly, mental illness, that's the number 2, and maybe even running close to number 1 problem that we face. Uh, Again, same problem with substance abusers. If you don't address the issue, then you can incarcerate them over and over, and they will eventually possibly even hurt themselves or hurt somebody else more likely. But just think about the double whammy. There are many, many individuals who are substance abusers slash mental illness. And that's very volatile. That's, as I might put an example, that's equivalent to going into a fire with gasoline on you, because it will ignite the fuel and make it worse. Well, that's the same thing that happens there. So if we don't deal with the issues of mental illness, then it's a problem. I taught special education dealing with behavioral disorder kids back in 2001, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3. And one of the problems that oftentimes I recognized is that those individuals with mental illnesses that were there, I'm not talking about the individuals who had physical disabilities or individuals who had situations where um, they had things that were not based on the mental illness, the ADHD individuals, uh, and individuals who are in there along with the kids who were, um, they had just a straight disability. Well, they would feed off of them. And what my point is that they needed to be separated in terms of dealing with them, because the poor kids who just had like communication disorders or other kinds of issues, um, dyslexia, or other things, just a myriad of them, they were prey for those who were the we call them the bad kids or troublemakers, because they were um, dealing with some mental issues. Now they were sick also, however, though they needed to be separated. But here's what I'm going to say about that last, is that I can tell you that if you follow those kids, and if the mental illness is not addressed at that level, which because of funding, there were problems, they push kids out and so forth, um, they become adult offenders. And you run across them in the adult system um, as well because of that. So anyway, it is incumbent on us in the correction systems, because what's the root word to corrections? Correct. And so what we should be doing is being about the business of correcting um, individuals, turning them around and um, giving them a new direction. I talk about my clock. I don't know if I've talked about it here, but if you look at a clock, at the top of the clock, there is 12. And then at the bottom of the clock, there is 6. And in between, on the right side, there is 3, and on the left side, there's 9. And those are quarters, from 1 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, and 9 to 12. Those are quarters, or 15 minutes. Well, my theory is that we need to have people do a 180. A 360 would bring them right back where they started. So if you're doing a 90-degree turn, which will put you at 3 o'clock, you can see where you need to go, which is 6 o'clock, and then you can see where you came from, which is uh, 12 o'clock. And so at 12 o'clock, that's where you start out needing the help. But the problem is that while you're at 3, you're still able to see what you did at 12. So you're not quite complete, but you're heading in the right direction. So you don't want to go back to 3, 2, 1, and then, back to 12. But anyway, you want to go to 3, 4, 5, and 6. So then by the time you get to 6, you really can't see it, because of the fact that you are facing another direction. And as I tell kids and students, that if you move further down on the 6, just keep going down on the 6, not up to the numbers, but just stay on 6. And the more you stay on it, the further away that you find what happened to you at 12. And you become a person with a new direction in life. Now, it takes a lot of work, but it is incumbent on us who are dealing with corrections to help them. One of the problems is budgetary restraints. And we also need seriously committed people that are taking these positions. This is not just a job. This is a life-changing experience for somebody. And again, your goal is not to lock them up, throw away the key, let them out and tell them don't do it no more. No, but while they're in there, to point them towards 6 o'clock. You got that? Everybody kind of get my illustration? You can type in the chat box. But if you remember that, it will help you. And I use that a lot with my students. Okay, so anyway, we deal with mental illness, developmental disabilities, um, and veterans. It's really sad that our veterans end up in the correction um, facility. It's tragic, I think, because these people have laid down their life, committed to serving the country and protecting us. And then, you know, they run into issues. I have many of friends who went off to the military. I wasn't one of them, not because I dodged it. They wouldn't take me because, as you heard my story about my dad being killed when I was 7, I had nothing but sisters. And later on, I had boys, but I was past the time that they would take me. But my point being is that uh, they wouldn't take me. I wanted to go to the Air Force, but they wouldn't take me because I was the last surviving male. But my point being is that I have many of friends who went off to war or just joined the military. During my era, it was the Vietnam War. And then later on, we had the Gulf War. We had, oh, you did? Yeah, yeah. So the Air Force was a place that I wanted to go because my dad was in what was called the Army Air Force. His, you know, the Air Force um, wings are silver and blue. Well, my dad's were brown and uh, yes, so Army. So they combined the Army Air Force, and then they later on came up with the separate the two, and they went their different ways. But my point being is this: is that those people uh, are owed royal treatment when they come back, and unfortunately, we find too many who have suffered illnesses because of their service, and it is our responsibility to take care of them and not um, leave them hanging. You know, I'm very high on that thing. So one of my classmates who became the governor of Chicago, Illinois, Pat Quinn, was a big advocate of dealing with vets, and we used to talk a lot about that kind of stuff. And you know, so anyway, one of the individuals that groups that we deal with is military veterans. So here's what I want you to do for this assignment. Select one of the special populations, only one, only one. And these are listed with the bullet points from substance abusers all the way down to sex offenders. Create an action plan. Now, what an action plan is first part is overview of the characteristics, define the group, write about it, provide the information. In the second part, you're going to describe an issue that affects your population, and then explain a solution to address that issue. Now, 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 bullet point number 3, which when we get to the rubric, you will see. Provide supporting evidence from credible sources. You will not get a good grade unless you conduct some research and provide citations in the body, not a citation, but citations in the body and references at the end. And we talked about during week 1 the importance of citations in the body, citing your sources. And you have to have some supporting sources because you are not an expert in it. Even if, and I have had students who work in corrections, you still need to go out and do some research. and provide sources. Don't use yourself as a credible source, because you're not. Even I don't use myself as a credible source. You guys can use me, but I am not going to use myself. Provides ideas with professional language with correct grammar, spelling. Now, here's the deal here. Your written assignment, it explains to you some questions of how, what to look out for. So the answer to the question is, do I write an action plan and a paper where your action plan is your paper? Yes. Okay. So that's why I said when I get here, I would explain. I wasn't trying to push you off to the side. I never do that. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't give you a part answer or a quick answer. I wanted to make sure that you got it. Because let me say this to you. I'm telling you right now, this is the beginning of how you're going to either do well in this class or not. And you'll see what I'm talking about in just a minute. So you got what has to be done. If you don't, look at these FAQs, frequently asked questions, and you'll have the answers. Okay? So now let's take a look at the rubric. Remember, I stress rubrics. So you view your rubric. So you give a chance to see your rubric before. Now, remember what I said last week. It is so important that you ignore emerging, competence, proficiency, and that you just pay attention to mastery. However, you should be aware that there are criteria that if you don't provide, you will end up in emerging or competence. How do you end up in emerging? Generally, if you do not cite your sources, you don't provide the sources. See what it says? Missing credible sources, missing credible sources, missing supporting evidence. And then we deal with 1 point for spelling and grammar and stuff like that. But you see the difference between if you cite your sources adequately, it's 7 points difference. It's look at the impact on special population variation. It's 13 points difference. And here it's 4 points difference. So you want to focus on exemplary overview of the characteristics of selected population and provide credible sources throughout the paper. It's got to be, some people throw in one resource. That's not, okay. 200 pages. No, I'm kidding. Enough pages to cover. It doesn't tell us. And you see that in here if you look at, so I'm taking out the rubric now. Everybody got the rubric though? You got the rubric? Okay. Please, I beg you, please do that. Notice what it says. It doesn't say 10 pages, 2 pages, 3 pages. Do make sure that you do it APA, which means you need a cover sheet. But what I'm saying is provide adequate information so that if you didn't know anything about your special population, that you could, a person can pick it up and they can say, oh, okay, they learned something about it. Don't just, it's double space, incidentally, not single space. So I tell students this. Get into the habit of not page counting. Get into the habit of writing adequate amount of information that you want to get somebody to get your point across to them. And this is someone who does not know anything about it. I know about it, and I'm the one who graded it, but I grade it from the perspective is, did you prepare your assignment adequately, that if someone like my wife would pick it up and read it, and she would be able to understand what the issue is with substance abusers or juveniles or women or military vets. And so you've provided information, an overview of the characteristics. Um, I'm a person who believe more information is better than less information. Uh, and and then you're going to analyze it basically in the second section. Okay, that's the best method. Trust me. I promise you, you will not go wrong with that. I have been very successful in life because of that. If I read something and I say, if a person reads this, do they thoroughly understand what I'm trying to tell them, or am I leaving out some stuff just to get the assignment completed? So, does that kind of answer your question? So if you think on that in that vein, in every class, and by the way, when you see assignments that say required 2 pages, 3 pages, the reason why we say that specifically is because we have determined, based upon what we perceive would be the average person uh, getting information from your paper that knew nothing, it would take 2 pages or 3 pages, not counting the cover page and that. But we don't have that issue here in this class. Okay, everybody on top of the correction system written assignment? Okay, good. Excuse me, let me go back to, one of the things about this class that I really like is that if you'd have taken it when it was 11 weeks, it was way more work. This one, they kind of helped a whole lot with getting students to understand the concepts of corrections. This is not a all inclusive course on corrections, but what it is that's why it's called Introduction to Corrections. All right. So then your quiz, I don't have to tell you about that. You know about how that works. You know also that you're not supposed to have notes and those kinds of things, that you have 3 opportunities to complete it before the due date, which is Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. So very important. And I usually tell students that since you have 3 times, try to take maybe the test on either Friday, Saturday, and then the final one on Sunday. Some students like to do 3 at the same time, and I know why, but in a way, I think that if you look at your first choice on Friday, then that means that there's probably some more um, preparation that you need to do in terms of going over the materials. Let me tell you, the quiz is only a measurement of how well that you adapt to the information to understand the module in itself. Yeah, yeah, some do that. And you don't have to do 3. So if you get 100 on the first one, why are you going to do 2 or 3? So if you take the second one and you get a lower score and you have 100 before, what's the grade going to be? 100. Nope. I said this last week. I said this during the lecture. It does not average out. It does not reduce your score. The highest score is what counts. That's pretty much how it works with grading other papers too. But the quizzes, when you have more than one, opportunity. No, no. So, but I'm saying if you get 100, you don't need to improve on 100. Now, if you want to, here's something, a point. Take the 100, take the test again after you got 100, just to see if you retain that information. You know, like maybe you might take it Friday, as was stated here, and then maybe Sunday. But if you don't complete it on Sunday and you do a low grade, it's not going to affect your grade adversely. Okay, got it? Okay, but you see why I said that? I've done that to myself. I've gone back and taken the test to see if yeah, I think you told me that. Didn't you tell me that last week that you were not a good test taker? Yeah, but you know what? Um, you ever heard the term necessary evil? It's true, and that's what that's about. So we're Ramona, haven't heard it. Oh, what that means, Ramona, is that it's something that you got to deal with. You can't get around it. And so we say it's an evil to the people who, like Christy, who says that she doesn't do well on these tests. But you know, I beg to differ with all of my students whenever they say they can't do well on these tests. But I do understand, because I talked about this last week, and myself, I did not do well on the LSAT. And if I took the LSAT again, the LSAT or those SAT, any of those, I'm still not going to do very well. But you know, I'm past all of that. That's water under the bridge. And when you say water under the bridge, by the way, it's an illustration that the purpose for the bridge is that you don't have to deal with the water anymore, because the water is under you. You pass over it and keep going. No one fails the SAT. You just get a low score. I know what you're talking about, though. You from the perspective that schools might say that you can't get in because your SAT is not high enough. That's what you're talking about, right? Hmm. No, never say you failed any of those tests. No, you didn't. Because quite honestly, again, there's a number of reasons why. I don't know you that well in terms of your history and life and so forth and so on. Maybe there are many things in there that um, people who put that test together lived in a different world than you do, different culture, and that's the key thing. You can't take me and expect me to respond to things the same way that someone else responds to it as an African American, and then some students who are Caucasian, and some students that are African American or Caucasian that were raised in a rural situation and go and take those tests. And the people who put the test together were urban people. You follow what I'm saying? So that's why we say that um, standardized tests. And incidentally, that's why a lot of schools are moving away from those things. We don't have that issue here. You're here, okay, and you're going to get us, and you can end up on a roll dean's list, and that's what I did. I did. I ended up on a roll dean list and made a, as we say, a lie out of the test. So anyway, that's a little bit of encouragement for you. So don't worry about tests. Tests are just you know, yeah. See, that's what they say. As I did with some people who told me way back when that I would never make it as a lawyer. I didn't go looking for those people, but I did end up having to, uh, some way or another, run across them, and I didn't have to tell them. Just like this. Let me show you what I got on. I want you to see this. Can you can you read that? Yeah, I says I am what a lawyer looks like. And so that's because I am, and that's the kind of thing that you want to do with people. You know, just do it, man. Like Nike said, I wear my "Just Do It" shirt as well. So, all right. So I said all this to say because there are people who really feel, a lot of students who feel like you do, and I encourage students by saying, don't worry about it. Just like I got friends who took the bar exam 4 times before they became lawyers. That was no reflection on their knowledge or education. There's so much politics involved with the bar exam and with all those exams. But anyway, has nothing to do with your knowledge. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. You know what that's about? Either of you know what that means? Uh-huh. Okay, yeah. So for those you students who are not here, that refers to what happened with the people in Guyana, which was a bad situation. The reason they died in Guyana when Jim Jones took them there was not because he took them there, but because they drank the Kool-Aid. The Kool-Aid was taken internally and it killed them. So that's what you don't do. You don't take internally. I'm a bad test taker. I cannot pass this test. Don't do that to yourself. You're smarter than that. Okay, let's move on. All right. So anyway, then you have your live lecture, and your live lecture is the key phrase or word that I'm going to give you. So let's spend a little time now talking about the topics of the module: adults, juvenile, and criminal behavior. Kind of already started on it, but we're going to get into it. So understanding uh, the, the, the things that take place. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time dealing with this because you can go back and you can look at this, but I'm going to show you some of it. So you click on it. That's how I clicked on the item, and it opens up, and it takes you through something that you cannot hear because I have my headphones on. But if you look at this, this is to help you to understand some theories of, so I'm going to kill the sound because it's kind of, okay. So now there are theories, and so some of these theories that you're going to go over, and then they should look familiar because of your reading. It tells you, and this is like I said again, information for you. And what they do is they break down each one. Now, she was talking about a class differentiation when talking about indicators of strain, how cultures look at things differently, kind of like what I was talking about a few minutes ago. So anyway, let me explain something to you. This bit of information is to give you some, how should I call, preparation for one of the parts of your job as a corrections officer, is the psychological aspects of what you have to deal with. In other words, um, it's like giving you psychology that you'll need to understand in order to do a good job as a correction officer. And that's what these theories are. And so you want to go over them because some of them are on the test. Okay. And they just name them. And it's a bunch of them. And we could spend the whole hour going on there. So, so if you take I want you to take the time to go over these types of things and listen to them, because it's part of studying to understand. Uh, but the key thing that I just want you to be aware of relate to the theories basically try to express or explain why people find themselves in correction facilities. And you will be able to discern that after you've completed your research. But use these theories on impacting corrections to help you to be able to um, get a good grasp, because it's really nice because you'll hear it and then you'll read it at the same time, and you can pause it and you can back up with it as well. Have you used any of these types of things in the module? I know this is the second week. Have you? Have you? Well, I encourage you to do so because, yeah, and I think that Ramona says yes. And I think that what you discover if you use those is that it actually enhances your ability to understand your PowerPoints and your reading. Isn't that true? Doesn't it help you to, yeah, it helps you to connect. And that's why we have them in here, not so much to include them in the lecture. All right. So now let's go to the incarceration and experience. Now, I do talk about this because of the fact that if you will notice that these are the three models that are what takes place when an individual is incarcerated. And notice what they did is that you have custodial model, because during that period of time, you have that person, of course, they're in prison, okay? And while they're in prison, then you're working on the issues of what we now have determined, rather than punitive, is to focus on what we did in the juvenile system. In the juvenile system, we never really concentrated on punitive. We weren't supposed to. We were supposed to rehabilitate. Well, across the board now, that we now have decided that the best method to help with recidivism is to deal with rehabbing individuals, taking them to 6 o'clock on the clock that I talked about. So the custodial model. But notice then you're going to eventually, while you're in there, do the rehabilitation. So they work. So notice how they touch, because from the day that you go in there in custody, you should have a part of this taking place, preparing for this. Rehabilitation is changing the direction. Reintegration is what you're going to be doing, is getting that individual prepared to be able to go back into society. One of the things that's so important is to remember is that when individuals are in prison, they're exposed to a different lifestyle than they are when they're not in there. And to be honest with you, long prison sentences actually um, prepare individuals to become more serious criminals than individuals with shorter ones. So what that means is that during that sentence, the faster you can get that person in the rehabilitation, and then they start to show themselves as a prisoner that's getting what they did wrong, accepting responsibility, and beginning to move in a direction that, okay, I understand what I did wrong. I'm going to try not to do it no more. But again, remember, we get back to the point that it's not on them if they have drug or mental problems. It's on us to provide the resources to help those individuals to understand. Nope. They are not. Psych hospitals are basically custodial places, to be honest. Uh, you don't get healed so much there. And actually, unfortunately, psych hospitals just expose you to more of it. And you know, you go in worse than you were when you went in. So yeah, that's a very good point. And so our goal is to, yep. Um, and so the goal that we have is to recognize that one day they're coming out. And since they're going to be coming out, we want to be have them of a state of mind that they can come back into society and learn from their mistakes. Okay. So now let's elaborate on that. And so it talks about custodial model is the emphasis on discipline and order. Okay. So there's a degree of that, but the rehabilitating model in it. So if you just have custodial, you have a problem, because you notice what's going to happen is that if you have just custodial, look at what happens. Look at the little balls here, the little circles. Which one touches both of them? The custodial and reintegration. Which one? You can see it. Yep, yep. And notice that if you just have the custodial, it doesn't prepare you for reintegration, but the rehabilitation model prepares you for reintegration. That's illustration there shows you how it, and so what you want to do is increase the custodial, decrease the custodial and increase the rehabilitation mode. All right. So rehabilitation emphasizes treatment, as that's what I've been talking about here, or addresses the actual need of the individual. That's what I believe in, resulting in reintegration, where it emphasizes ties back into the community with their families, um, and being able to function as a contributing citizen in the community where they are going to be living. So, and it says here, rehabilitation model emphasized includes maintenance of the individual's ties to family and their community, such as their church or other entity that helps them in terms of in terms of development, as a method of addressing their needs and recognizing that the individual is going to, as I said, an example of of the custodial model is where you keep people in cells long hours and you don't let them out but a few hours, maybe to exercise, stuff like that. You're not providing services for them. You're just let me tell you what. Okay, penitentiary, the term penitentiary came from the word penant, which meant that you're supposed to have time to stop and think about what you did wrong. It's like a timeout. But if you don't have anything that you learned during that timeout, it doesn't change anything, except it might make you angrier. And so you'll come out as an angry individual. You see what I'm saying? So it's discipline. It's discipline. I discipline my children, but at the same time, I teach them rehabilitation in why I'm doing the discipline, because I want to prepare them to advance in life. So it's always going to be some custodial part, because you have to have those people in a position where they're taken out of what put them there in the first place. That's the problem though with prison, is that you can get more drugs in prison than you can on the streets. Did you know that? Oh yeah. And there are a number of reasons. This is because you got individuals who are um, corrupt, people that work for the organization and so forth and so on. But anyway, so I want to focus on how these models work. All right. And so what happens is that we have what we call different levels of security. We start talking about the custodial model, where the max, and notice what it does, it limits to minimize escape and violence. That's the purpose for it. These are some bad dudes, so to speak. Okay, they're out of control. They find themselves creating riots and fights, gangs, and all of that stuff. Medium security, less rigid restrictions on offenders and then the minimum, more freedom, because then it's more like what they came out of. And so what happens, the maximums were designed to keep you from getting away and limit your freedom. Mediums were to prevent escape and violence, but the restrictions on offenders and visitors are not as rigid. 3, minimum, permits the offender and visitors much freedom as is consistent with the concept of incarceration. So the key thing is, remember, the economy of prisons is under attack financially because of repeat offenders, and also because of the budgetary restraints. So here are some factors. Inadequate supervision because of budgetary issues, how prisons are designed, the availability of weapons, we already talked about that. We can add drugs in there too, and how they are housed. And so you have inadequate supervision by staff members, because you have some people who are in there as just a job. You can't, this is not designed for that. Go do something else. Architectural design that promotes rather than inhibits victimization. And then there are weapons, housing violent prone individuals near relatively defensive people. That's what happens when you have individuals who are in there for short terms exposed to lifers. You know, the lifers, particularly in states where there's no death penalty, can commit crimes and not get any more time in reality. And the professors or teachers or instructors for individuals that are not hardcore criminals and they come out hardcore criminals. Overall, the high level of tension is produced by close quarters. No one likes to be in close quarters. That's a psychological thing that, you take a person, put them in a small room, and depict that same person in a room that's bigger, and you'll see the difference in how they operate. Okay. So special populations. All right, I'm not going to go into details on that because this is your job. So I'm definitely not going to spend time on this one. But again, it gives you in this section, which you want to pay close attention to, some of the information. Now, please do not cite this section in your papers. Do not, I repeat, do not. Okay, so it explains substance abusers, offenders with developmental disabilities, offenders with HIV and AIDS. Did I skip one? Elderly offenders. Yeah, I knew I skipped one. Elderly. And then long-term offenders, military vets, and we talked about that, and you're going to do some further research there. So this could be a starting point. Sex offenders. Then it goes back around. So these are the section, this is the section that covers what you have in terms of your selection for the assignment that you have. Okay, these are the special populations. Now, let's talk about and we're going to pretty much conclude with this because the vocabulary I'll show you a little bit because that's helping you prepare for your exam. As we know, the key theory in the difference between adult and correction systems is the goal of rehabilitation as a primary function. And because of the fact that what we want to do is try to salvage these in individuals and turn them around, get them to go to 6 o'clock real early on my little clock thing, and to and then I'll be quiet. Bixby jumping in. Bixby is on my phone. Always want to jump in on my conversations. So anyway, um, and so what happens is that um, with juveniles, there's a heavy emphasis on the family and um, recognizing the fact that um, individuals who end up in these situations are generally adversely affected by who they hang with. And I always tell my kids, watch who you hang with. So it talks about influence by peers. And so you really like those two things. The families be a support, and then your peers can adversely affect. Now, it can be negative if you have families who are preparing individuals. In my years of representing individuals from 1978 to the time I retired, from representing people in roughly 2000 or close to that, I can tell you that I had individuals I started out with where I got their kids and I got a few grandkids that were. And so the family was a criminal family. So those are situations, but we want to try to make sure that we give that juvenile the best possible opportunity for a quality life. And so therefore we place, as we say, less emphasis on punishment and more on individualized treatment or rehabilitation. And again, I'm a fan of doing the same thing in both of them. Okay. Now, so what you could do, this drag and drop function is, for example, you can determine which of these apply. So juvenile petition, and so what's a juvenile petition? The formal charge. Juvenile respondent. Jump in anytime. On the right, which of these is it? Juvenile respondent. The respondent is the person charged. Yes. Adult trial. See what happens if you try to put it in there and it doesn't fit. Adult trials is actually a determination of guilt. There you go. Adult arrested. It's only 3 left. Yes. We don't do that with juveniles. Juvenile finding, outcome of the case. And then juveniles, of course, referred to the court. So you go through and you can do those things. Well, you already did. But it says you want to make sure that you understand not just the terminology, but understand how it fits and why. Okay. So the key thing in adult and juvenile corrections, as you guys have pretty much discerned from your reading, there's some really good stuff in there, and the PowerPoints as well that help you understand. We don't find juveniles guilty. We adjudicate them. Okay. We don't start with an indictment. We start with a petition, because it's almost like a quasi-seminal civil issue there as well. And again, the idea is to rehabilitate the individuals there. So finally, as we're wrapping up here, we're done. Vocabulary review, critical people for your quiz. And you can hit the start quiz. And then you want to take these things and match them with their description. So what's the risk principle? Risk principle, is it 1, 2, or 3? Okay, we'll see. Need principle. Is that it? And then, of course, this one. Let's see if you're right. They will stick if you're not, but listen, see what it says. Incorrect. So then you got to go back, and you could either continue, but then you want to go back so that you can get it. So I'm just showing you this. I know which one is not right, but you have to do that, and you have to play around with this thing until you get correct. So just because they connect, it's not the same thing as that other thing that we did with juveniles. So you got to do that, okay? And you got 7 questions. Got it? Okay, there we go. That's what it's designed to do, is to have you, help you with your studying. Okay? Okay. So now it's time to go. Any questions about anything that we covered tonight? Okay. I'm going to give you a key phrase, which is kind of important for tonight. Special populations. That's it. Give me that. Give me special populations, and you will get your points. All right, so I'm going to go say good night to you guys. I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday, the 21st of November at 8:39 p.m. Central Standard Time for another session in Introduction to Corrections. In the meantime, look for your assignments to be graded for week 1 by Friday night. Okay, so good night, stay safe, and keep studying hard. Again, you know the rule as far as reaching out to me if you need to. Don't hesitate. I will be here. All right, take care.